Sure po, ma'am.
Okay.
So let us pray everyone po. Heavenly Lord God, we thank you po sa gabing ito na pinagsama-sama niyo po kaming lahat na magkatipon-tipon para sa aming online class together with our dear Ma'am Mariana Pulido and guide us po sa aming journey for that ENP Licensure Examinations 2026. And ingatan niyo po ang bawat isa sa amin and lahat po ng aming dalangin ay inyong tingin sa matamis na pangalan ni Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Thank you, ENPJ. So I would like to call everyone ENP as early as now. So everyone will be motivated, to do your best. All right. So let me share. Good evening again. So let me share my screen now. We have a new topic on one of those theories, but napakadaming theories. I'd like to start with spatial okay, hang on. Okay. So we call this as theories of spatial planning. All right. So for the theories of spatial planning, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I would like to start with agricultural land rent theory by Johann Heinrich von Thunen. So, but before that, yeah, let's try to establish the background here. Yeah, a background on what's spatial planning and what's spatial equilibrium to start off with this topic. So, theories of spatial equilibrium describe market economy in Europe just before or just after the Industrial Revolution. So they were, or this theory influenced the distribution and arrangement of settlements. These theories respond to the rapid economic and social changes of that time, clarifying why cities, towns, and rural areas are positioned and sized the way they are. So, cities are believed to be structured in a hierarchical system that's spatially balanced. So what do we mean by this one? This means that cities are believed to be structured in hierarchical system where there's clear ranking from the largest cities down to the smallest villages. So this system is considered spatially balanced because each level in the hierarchy has its own role and function. So larger cities act as service and economic centers for smaller towns, while those smaller settlements supply resources and people to the larger cities. So there's also, we know what's equilibrium, right? But in this context, it means big places are balanced by smaller places, and big places feed on small places and vice versa. So, in this context, it's we are talking or we are referring to the relationship where big places are balanced by smaller places. So the phrase "big places feed on small places and vice versa captures the two-way exchange between large urban centers and their surrounding smaller communities. So, for planners, understanding this equilibrium is essential for designing effective spatial strategies. Aside from the spatial strategies, also infrastructure and public services. So, it also serves as the foundation for theories that we'll study later on, like central place theory, Bidram theory, etc., from these five theories. Okay. Um, so let me check the next one. It's a continuation that still we are still on spatial equilibrium. It said here centralized goods and services would be distributed evenly in a systematic pattern. Distribution is due to domination by large centers. So centralized goods and services do not occur randomly. They're distributed evenly and systematically across the landscape. This systematic pattern happens because larger urban centers dominate the smaller ones, exerting influence over how resources, markets, and services are allocated. So, in planning, this is a practical observation. Bigger cities become the main hubs for goods, services, and economic activity. Then, central places are unique because they can only develop under specific conditions of complementarity and balance. So, what do I mean by this one? That a central place is a settlement that provides goods and services to its surrounding area. However, not every location can develop into a central place. There must be specific conditions of complementarity. Okay, and yeah, conditions of complementarity and balance, meaning the surrounding areas need what the central place offers, and there's a balance in the flow of goods and services. This principle guides planners in identifying where commercial centers or service hubs are most likely to succeed. Then here, big place and small place are interdependent. This word. And central places have a relationship of mutual interdependence with their hinterlands. Okay. Central places depend totally on hinterland trade. So the relationship between a big place. So when we say a big place, we are referring to a city, like a city, okay? And a small place like a town or village. Okay, so the relationship between a big place and small place is one of mutual interdependence. Central places rely on their hinterlands, means the surrounding rural or less developed areas, for raw materials, food, and trade. At the same time, the hinterlands rely on central places for access to markets, specialized services, and goods. For planning, understanding this two-way connection is essential in regional development and land use allocation. A city is the centralization or further convergence. Okay, remember the word convergence of multiple central places. So, a city represents the process of centralization where several central places combine or overlap to form a larger, more complex urban area. This convergence creates new opportunities for economic growth, opportunities also for increased specialization and improved access to goods and services. Recognizing cities as the result of this centralization helps planners address issues of urban sprawl, transportation, and service distribution. So we have also assumptions here that um, it's important to recognize that these theories are based on several assumptions, which are often unrealistic. So, like for example, space is homogeneous, uniform, uniform topography and climate, featureless plain. So these theories assume that space is homogeneous, okay, and blah blah blah. That is the one that those that I have underlined and encircled. So this simplifies reality by ignoring mountains, rivers, and variations in the environment. So here, fertility of land or the value of soil is constant and uniform. Yield per unit acre is the same everywhere. So it is also assumed that in the theory, the fertility of land is constant and uniform, so that yield per unit hectare is the same everywhere. So in practice, soil quality and agricultural productivity vary widely, but the model, this theory ignores this. And then price P, okay, is the same for all producers of a given crop. So that's another assumption. This means everyone gets the same price no matter where they are, which is rarely true in actual markets. Market is relatively isolated from other markets. So the theories also assume that the market or the the market is relatively okay isolated, means the area under study does not interact with or compete with nearby markets, again something that rarely happens in reality. Now there's this phrase friction of distance, meaning that the first is distance is reduced mathematically to transportation cost. So moving goods becomes a simple formula, and that's the objective here. So transportation costs are proportional to distance and invariant to direction, which means it costs the same to move goods over the same distance, no matter the route or obstacles. I mean, finally, space can be traveled equally in every direction from the marketplace, which ignores real barriers like rivers, mountains, or political borders. So for environmental planners, these assumptions are critical to identify because they highlight where classical models break down and where more realistic planning needs to take local conditions into account. So it's also still continuation here on the these models make or the so it's important to recognize this in our practice, okay? And even during your board exam, we need to really understand fully, uh, so that you you want you won't be misunderstanding the if not the questions, the choices, or the options in those board questions, okay? Baka mabaliktad, ano? So, and so the assumptions are providing limitation or the correct understanding that you need to recognize, not only during the board exam, but in your practice later. So it said here, there's perfect, perfectly free market competition. Goods are completely sold for profit. So that's the first assumption. Um, that this means there are no barriers or restrictions. Anyone can buy or sell, and all goods are completely sold for profit. But in real economies, regulations, monopolies, and barriers usually exist. So making this assumption unrealistic. So there is the term economic determinism, which sees humans or economicus as being motivated only by the pursuit of profit. So this is a narrow view that ignores social, environmental, and cultural factors. Today, many economists and planners reject this, understanding that people make decisions for many reasons beyond just profit. So another assumption is producers, meaning farmers and businessmen, are profit maximizers. So and cannot be content with anything less than maximum profit. So this is the third assumption here. Or one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight. So eighth assumption that it in reality in reality farmers and business people often have other goals like sustainability probably, or community well-being, or family legacy, etc. So these assumptions are true only. So there's a note here that these assumptions are true only for certain places, maybe continental Europe at a specific historical period, but assumptions cannot be applied universally. So yeah, we need to remember that these assumptions, when applied to modern planning, it must account for diverse cultures, economies, values, and many other things. So we can now move to the first one. Okay, we are now ready to understand agricultural land theory, land rent theory by Johann Heinrich von Thunen in from 1783 to 1850. Okay. So here it said land with greatest demand is the one nearest to the market because of low transport costs. So remember the variables that are included here in the model. So it's the land with highest rent and value per acre. So according to Johann Heinrich von Thunen's theory, the land with greatest demand is the one nearest to the market because of low transport costs. So this is the land that commands the highest rent and value per acre, since producers save money on transporting goods and can get products to market quickly and efficiently. So that's what it means. And so another one is concentric rings around the market center could be defined and organized according to the prevailing production techniques. So Von Thunen proposed that we can observe concentric rings around the market center, and each ring here represents its ring here represents a different kind of agricultural activity organized according to the prevailing production techniques and how much each activity can afford to pay for land closer to the market. So in the outer belt, there would be little demand for land because of um, be, because of high transportation costs. So the farther you are from the market, the more it costs to deliver goods. So as a result, rent would be low, and um, the value of extensive production would be correspondingly low. So, so it's saying here, and so this is the diagram now. You can see uh, the market center is surrounded by rings for horticultures. Can you see this one? So this is the center, and so there's horticulture and dairying. Forestry is next, and then um, crop rotation also, and then grazing. So each place according to transport costs and land value. So it's really important to understand this theory that helps explain why certain agricultural activities cluster near cities and why land values change with distance from the market. So it's a classic model that we need to remember when we take the boards. So it's a continuation of von Thunen's theory that there are differences in the intensity of production of a particular crop and the distribution of different crops relative to the market center. So um, this means that crops grown closest to the market, so I've mentioned already, tend to be those that require more care, investment, or frequent transport. So like vegetables and dairy crops and activities that need less attention or are less perishable are found farther away. So intensity of production and type of land use varies with increasing distance from the market. Land use diminishes intensely in inverse relationship with distance from the market center. So as you move farther, so it means that if you as you move further from the center, land use diminishes intensely in inverse relationships with distance from the market center. And this means farms farthest from the market tend to be larger, less productive per hectare, and focus on goods that are cheaper to transport or store, like grains and grazing. So, in summary, von Thunen's model helps planners understand why certain crops and activities are found at specific distances from urban centers and how transportation costs shapes the use and value of land. So, this one is actually, yeah, it shows how rent, this one, or how rent, okay, this one, changes as you move farther from the center. So you can see the lines there, here, okay, that as you move from the center, for each type of from the center of market. Okay, and then so you can also for each type of crop A, B, C. So the potential rent decreases with increasing distances from the market. And this is because transportation costs go up, reducing what farmers can afford to pay for land farther out. So each line here, you can see the RA, BC, it shows the maximum rent that could be paid for a given crop at any distance from the market. So where these lines cross, you see the zones where each crop is most competitive. And close to the market, crop A is grown because it can pay the highest rent. So as you go farther, crop B takes over, and in the outer zone, only crop C remains profitable. So then this one also, in this slide, we can, okay. Actually, these are still some points here that actual agricultural land use planning in most countries deviates. So these are critics of the model. It deviates significantly from von Thunen, so it's not concentric. So that's the deviation that it's critiquing the concentric model. That actual are in practice, the patterns we see are not concentric rings as the classic model suggests. So farmers follow natural features. They plan according to the course of river, okay, to the course of river or water source and contours of forest land. So instead, farmers follow natural features and they plan according to the course of river or water source or the okay, so this is a major departure from the simplified featureless plain assumed by von Thunen. And so selection of crops is based on richness and fertility of soil, which is not the same in all locations. So the selection also of crops um depends on the richness and fertility of soil. So which is okay, which is highly variable. So soil quality is not the same everywhere. So one of the critics also. So land use patterns adjust accordingly. There is no sole isolated center because there are also secondary centers. So which the model did not provide for that particular it did not include in the concept or in the model for or it did not provide secondary centers in the concept or in the model. So yeah, instead, because there are secondary centers for outside the model, like other towns or markets, so which further complicate the idealized pattern. And farmers are not um, profit maximizers anyway, that um, who are preoccupied with optimal land use. So they do not focus exclusively on the optimal land use for maximum profit. And then it also mentioned about farmers or satisfiers, meaning content with a certain level of productivity and have other values to consider. And these other values here may include intrinsic values. It said here, an activity valued in its own right. Then there's expressive values, a means of self-expression, instrumental values, means of earning income, means of earning income, and then social values is done for sake of interpersonal relationship. So it yeah, it mentioned, so it's trying to say that um there are still values outside being that farmers are satisficers, that they are only concerned about that productivity aspect. So there are still other values. So that's what it's trying to tell us. So there are so in this diagram also, okay, if you look at the diagram, there are also real land use patterns. They're influenced by central market, river, dairy and vegetables. So forestry intensive crop rotation, arable and pastures, tree field, crop rotation system, and extensive stock grazing. So, and how these patterns adapt to modified conditions, such as the presence of a secondary market or natural features. So, but in the model, it only considered one center, and so it mentioned here that in its critique, it said there's no sole isolated center. Okay, so after the von Thunen's agricultural or the agricultural land rent theory, we can go now to central place theory by Walter Christoller. So I think in two successive board exams, 2024 to 2025, I think it mentioned about Walter Christoller. So it would also be good to, it's part of the special theories that we need to fully understand. So Central Place is a village, town, city that's engaged in settlement, farming, trade, and provides a common location for the local exchange of goods and services. Um, it in planning practice, and these central places act as hubs for economic activity and everyday transactions. So um, so it said here that hinterland is the surrounding area. So I think I already mentioned about hinterland in the first few slides as a general theory. And so within this model or theory, hinterland was defined as the surrounding area or market area being served by a central place. It's a large tributary. Um, so okay. Then in this theory also, it mentioned there's clustering of human population around central places through time until a hierarchy of settlements appears that corresponds to the market's need for low level to high level services. So the larger the settlements, the fewer their number. Okay. Um so and okay, here so there's the definition of central place, then definition of hinterland, and then about the clustering, uh and clustering of human population. Here it's said that it happens over time and eventually a hierarchy of settlements develops which matches the market the market's need for low level to high level services. So smaller settlements offer basic goods while larger ones provide more specialized or higher level services. So um the larger the settlements, the fewer their number. So this means there are many small towns and only a few large cities. The pattern reflects how markets are structured. Many people need access to basic goods and services close to home, but only a few locations can support large, complex centers. So um, we will understand this better here. Um, the larger the settlement. Okay. The larger a settlement, the farther away a similar size settlement is. So this pattern occurs because big settlements serve wider areas. So there's less need for another large center nearby. So do you get that? Um, and so the range of market increases as the population increases. So as a settlement grows, it can attract people from farther distances, offering more specialized goods and services. So again, it mentioned here that the larger the settlement, the higher the order. So please don't be confused about this one. The higher the order of its services. So it's the order here, order is referring to the services. So, um, but it said highlights, or it highlighted that deviations to this rule are, okay, tourist resorts that have a smaller or have a small population but large number of functions. And because tourist resorts can have a small population, or because they serve many visitors and not just residents. So um it's contrary to the second one, which is dormitory town. So this is a technical term that um that's defined as that's having a large population but a small number of functions. So, like most people just live there and work elsewhere. Like, for example, if you live in Bulacan and then you work in Makati, and so that makes it dormitory town because it just functions as a place where you sleep. But all other activities, they're done in the place of in the workplace. So the town itself doesn't offer many services because of the role as a dormitory town. It's contrary to tourist resorts where it's serving both visitors and residents. So um and so these principles and exceptions are also important for understanding urban systems and applying spatial planning in practice. There are, okay, it's a continuation to demonstrate central place theory as um, describing the urban hierarchy model, or yeah, in the context of this one, it's hierarchy that it's trying to how it defined central place theory is on this context. So there are as many size classes of cities as markets. This means that every type of market has a corresponding class of city, from small towns to major metropolitan centers. Then cities of the same order have similar economic characteristics and population sizes. So cities in the same tier or order function in a similar way and support similar populations. Higher order cities have all the services of a lower order city, plus functions that they export to lower order cities. So um, it means that higher order cities have all the services of a lower order city and more. They provide additional functions that they export to lower order cities, making them more complex and or have more services or service rich. Do you get that? So also smaller cities have smaller hinterlands that and are closer together. So they serve nearby rural areas, and their influence doesn't extend as far as larger cities. So you will understand better when we get to the to some diagrams or um some further explanations on this. So central places of the same order will be equally spaced across the regional or national landscape. Means that the this ideal pattern reflects how settlements are distributed to efficiently serve their markets. So um commodities generally do not flow up the hierarchy. It's simply saying that goods and services tend to move from higher to lower order cities and not the other way around. So the big point here, I will read a useful but not perfect model that underscores the importance of recognizing the local city's role in a regional economy. So it's it helps us recognize the local city's role in a regional economy, but it's important to remember that such um more such patterns often deviate from the ideal. So we can go here that producers are still under central place theory. Producers are willing to travel up to point A to purchase from the other producers. So this means there's some maximum distance that producers will travel to exchange goods, helping define the boundaries of each market area. And then with improved transport and communication, consumers willing to travel farther to be. So as transportation and communication become easier and more efficient, the market area expands and people are willing to travel greater distances to access goods and services. So market areas overlap means in real market areas overlap in reality. So this is because the range of different goods and services vary. So the boundaries of different central places are not always uh, separate or but they intersect. So it's explained here that development of hexagonal market areas around the system of central places, tangential spheres are more efficient. So it's a key insight of Christoller's theory that hexagons fit together without gaps. So do you get that? Unlike circles, that when you are for example, if you have circles, I mean not really intersecting. But when you put circles together and there are some extra spaces there. So but here if you are using the hexagonal market areas as a model, then it does not have it fits together like it's fitted so together it does not have any gap, and so making them the most efficient way to divide space. So tangential spheres are more efficient for covering an area and ensuring that everyone is within reach of a central place. So that creation of higher order and lower order services within this theory means that it leads to the creation of higher model lower order services, because higher order services are more specialized, okay, and located in larger central places, while lower order services are common and found in smaller settlements. And let's try to look at this figure. Actually, this was the same figure lifted from the book of um, B.J.L. Berry, okay, on geography of market centers and retail distribution. So this was during my time when I took the board exam way back. So exactly ito yung pinrint sa board exams. But you know the diagram or the figure is not really very very complex, but there's always a way to make it more complex like this. That okay, village, town, city. So it means that in this diagram, it's a systematic pattern of central places is evenly spaced and surrounded by hexagonally shaped market areas. So again, in Christoller's theory, this regular spacing ensures efficient coverage and access to goods and services, with each central place serving its own market without overlaps or gaps. So I was trying to tell you earlier about the without those gaps in between those hexagonal um yeah hexagonal, how they call this one, market areas. So service activities here range from low order services found in every center to higher order services found only in major centers. Large number of people. So I'm trying to read first. Larger number of people required to support a hospital, university, or department store than a gasoline station, post office, or grocery store. So service activities, I mean, low order services. So low order services means that those that are normal in barangays, pag Pilipinas yung pinag-uusapan. And like, we have groceries, we have sari-sari stores, we have gas stations that are found in towns, smaller towns. And so, because they are needed frequently, so they are provided in every center, even in small villages. Then, pag when we are referring to higher order services, we mean we those that are categorized under higher order services are those um, amenities like our infrastructure like hospitals, universities, department stores. So they're not really normal. Normally, they're not normally found in smaller villages, or but they're found in big cities. So because it require a larger market, so they are only found in bigger cities. So a larger number of people is required to support a hospital, university, or department store than a gasoline station, of course, or may post office pa ba. But during that time, so it's an important facility, or a service area, a service center, a post office, or grocery store. But we don't really say grocery store, especially in the Philippines. We always refer to it as sari-sari store, di ba? So, um, so it has a very important specs here, that lower in this model, that lowest rank centers were likely to be located 7 kilometers apart. So this specific distance reflects the typical spacing between the smallest service centers, based on the idea that residents should not have to travel too far for essential goods and services. Okay, so I hope you're getting it correctly. The hierarchy of central places, still a continuation. Um, so each high rank central place offers all goods and services of next lower rank place. So plus at least one or two more. Okay. Um, so this means that as you move up the hierarchy, cities provide everything that smaller centers do or serve, as well as additional goods and services. So the model demonstrates the rule of twos, like lower order or low order goods. The low order goods, we mean the low threshold, are inexpensive and frequently purchased goods. So their hierarchy follow the rule of twos. Okay. Um. So threshold of A equals 2 times threshold of B. Did you get that? And threshold of B is twice or 2 times threshold of C. And K equals 2 hierarchy. This means each higher level requires twice as many people as the level below to support the next um, tier of goods or services. So high order goods, the high threshold, are costly and infrequently purchased goods such as universities, malls, etc. So because they're expensive and they're both less often, and examples, universities and also these require a larger population and a bigger market area to be viable. So they're only found in large cities. So at the top here are regional metropolises that offer all services associated with central places and that have large hinterlands. So the meaning that the broadest areas and larger populations. So it's important that we understand this model, that why certain services are only found in bigger cities and how settlement patterns are structured in the planning practice. Um, so it's okay. This is hierarchy of central places. So I hope you get this quite correctly. So for example, you always there's always the rule of twos here, that each time you go up the hierarchy and it's always twice the threshold of the the lower order. Okay, the lower the the lower rank place. Okay, now again, another, during our time and even after my time, after in the board exam. So again, the same, okay, the same question. So I believe it's not yet taken out from the computer of PRB, of environmental planning. So siyempre, during that time, uh, papel pa, di ba? So, hard copies. Yung board questions are bago lang naman. So, it was just applied sa 2025 batch or ENPs, yung computer, I mean digital questions. But during our time, ganito siya, ganyan siya ka black and white. Of course, wala namang colored. Ewan ko lang kung colored yung 2025. But here, ilang years din na they gave this problem about scaleogram as a measure of centrality. So if I were the examiner, ibibigay ko pa din ito. But probably with with a clearer image. So when you see like figures na ganito, you always look at the legend, di ba? Yung function present, baka mabaliktad eh, sayang naman. Sayang naman yung points, di ba? So function present, function absent. So if I ask you now, which of the uh, settlements have the most number of functions that are present?
Amaligan.
Legazpi.
No, not Legazpi because meron siyang absent, di ba?
Kamaligan.
Ay, yeah, Naga, Kamaligan.
Naga.
So, although if you notice the population, it's higher in Legazpi, but meron siyang absent. Ano ito? Can you see this one? Can you see kung ano yung absent? Ito. Di ba? So, you don't even need to look for the different items there, but you just have to look, ano yung totally na black lahat. So that, obviously, ito, yung Kamaligan, ano? The second, kasi pinaka mataas yung population of Legazpi, but it has, hindi nag-exist ito. So, it means that it has the most number present lahat for Kamaligan. Okay, very good. So, ganun lang. So, you can answer that within 2 seconds, diba? Or 1 second lang yung question. So, we're now on the usefulness of central place theory. By the way, just to describe scaleogram, it's a graph. So it's a graphic tool used in planning practice to measure and compare the centrality of different settlements. So centrality refers to how important or influential a settlement is in terms of providing goods, services, and functions to its surrounding area. So in the scaleogram here, yeah, settlements are listed. So set here, and then together with their population in thousands. So across the top. So these are the functions listed, and so it's easy for each settlement. Kita mo yung black square means function is present. Baka kasi mabaliktad, ano? Baka mapili ninyo yung madaming white. So they can always improve the figure. However, they would still ask about scaleogram as a measure of centrality. Okay, so here still on the usefulness of central place theory, that it theory stresses relevance of market area to the size of a town's population. So this means that the area a town serves is directly related to how many people live there and what kinds of goods and services are needed. Theory highlights the importance of situation rather than the site conditions. So, but in planning practice, or in planning practice, this means a town's connections to other places, roads, and trade routes that referring to the situation. It matter more than just its physical or geographic features, referring to the site. Okay. Theory introduces urban hierarchy, helps understand the emergence of an integrated hierarchy of cities of different functions and sizes. So this helps planner also see how towns and cities are organized in a system from small settlements to large metropolitan centers. Theory led to the introduction of the rise sound size rule. So it's a concept used to predict the rank size rule. This is really a very, i-apply nyo yung stock knowledge ninyo, di ba? So rank size rule is a concept used to predict and analyze the relative sizes of cities within a region or a country. So the theory serves as basis for administering urban regions and for allocating resources for investment decisions. And so it also it helps us, it helps planners and policymakers also to decide where to put investments, infrastructure and services to best support regional growth. Then it provides a framework for understanding regional spatial infrastructure or structure. Uh, it offers a way to analyze, compare, and plan settlement patterns in any given region. So it's very useful, right? So, but there are limitations. If you've heard about the usefulness of the model, but there are also limitations. It assumes urban settlements are located on the isotropic or uniform plane and keeps terrain, soils, other environmental factors as uniform. Theory ignores variable topography. And so production inputs are present everywhere, meaning ubiquitous at the same price. So, um, yeah, it's yeah, it assumes urban settlements are located on isotropic or uniform plane, meaning the land is flat and identical everywhere. So it keeps terrain, soils, other environmental factors are uniform and ignores variable topography. So the theory also assumes production inputs are present everywhere at the same price, which is rarely true in the planning practice. So it's static, a steady state economy free of government or social classes. So um, in practice, economies are dynamic and both governance and social structure influence development. So transportation is universally available. It assumes uniform transportation costs in all directions. So this is unrealistic since barriers and infrastructure vary in every region. Then theory assumes uniform distribution of population, uniform per capita demand, and evenly distributed purchasing power. Population is equated with demand, not necessarily so. So, um, yeah, in practice, it's not always accurate. Um, because it also mentioned with it equates population with demand. So there's linear concept of market from a single good economy to a multiple goods economy with different other goods. Mm, so what do we mean by this one? That it moves from single because actual economies are far more complex. It's not really linear, isn't it? So yeah, so it's more complex, especially today. The market is becoming complex, especially so that there's now the incorporation of digital economy and many other variations. So producers always optimize or maximize profits while consumers minimize cost. I think this is self-explanatory here that let me see, let me check this one. Ano yan? Because there are more limitations here. Like consumers expected to patronize nearest centers from their locations. No shopping externalities, no complementary goods and imperfect substitutes. So it assumes meaning it there are no shopping externalities, meaning it ignores situations where consumers might combine shopping trips or seek out complementary goods and imperfect substitutes. And so theory does not consider local specialization wherein places produce goods and services from other areas. So it does not consider a local specialization. So it fails to account for towns or cities that focus on unique products or services and export them to other regions. Um, Theory ignores influence of manufacturing industry. Contrary to central place theory, central places can also develop around resource base like source of gold, iron, fish. So if it's a mining town, etc., and not necessarily the consumer market. So yeah, in reality, central places can also develop around our resource-based industries, like right. So mining, fishing. So not just the consumer market. Does not consider effect of large in-migration labor on the size of central places. So yeah, these are significant factors in urban growth and hierarchy in practice. So then there are real world deviations that influence settlement patterns and centrality, including historical circumstances, government interference, social stratification, income differences, topographical variation. So, recognizing these limits is crucial in planning practice, as no single theory can perfectly capture the complexity of urban and regional systems. So, I think, so what's the time? It's 10. Um, let's see if I can still cover Jen. So how many pages do we have there? I think we can continue tomorrow. Okay, so what day is today, Jen?
Wednesday po.
Wednesday,
Yes, ma'am.
Thursday. So let me just check my schedule. Tingnan ka lang ha. Stop ko lang. So tomorrow, let's see ano yung time so then I can already make announcement here. So let me check.